oi, well, it's a drizzly old day, but we're out on the banks of the famous Orchid Lake.
The jewel of the crown, Morgan.
Oh, God, look at them tail walking. That fish was out for about 4 seconds. Proper carpio weather this is. Well, guten Morgen. It's not Morgan, but we have got a carp. Whee! Well, there you go. A lovely, cracking condition Orchid winter carp in all its glory. Home of the 30s. Can I go home without a 30? Oi, oi. Well, it's a drizzly old day, but we're out on the banks of the famous Orchid Lakes in Oxford. Now, this place has got a hell of a history. It's been going absolutely donkey's years. It's full of some amazing big carp, and we're here for a few days to try and get in amongst them. The weather is super drizzly, super grim, but very, very mild, and we've got low pressure. Things are looking pretty favourable. Although it's not the most pleasant conditions to be out, it is CAF, which is what is most important at the end of the day, isn't it? So I'm here to fish with Chris Currie. Chris is the new Fisheries Manager, and he's also got a wealth of experience in the sort of fishery side of things and the sort of biology side of things as well, if you like. So we're going to be picking his brains throughout the session on some of his knowledge in those fields. We'll catch up with him in a bit. He's just getting his rods out, and I want to do the same because, as I say, the weather's bang on, so time is of the essence. Rods must be in the lake or we're not going to catch any carp. Let's get some rods out. Well, mate, the rods are out, the rain has stopped, and we're at Orchid, home of the 30s. Thank you very much for inviting me down here. What a place.
Yeah, no problem. Pretty historic as fit as carp fishing goes, as you know. Good winter water, so obviously stood on the banks here in January, expecting a fish or two. We've seen a few show today as well, which is useful.
How big's the lake? It's quite a good size, isn't it? 18,
20 acres roughly. That seems to be around the sort of numbers that they're talking. It's a pretty strange shape for a lake. Can be very... Fish can be very sort of swimmy at times. They seem very, obviously certainly in the winter when they're a lot more sort of compacted, a lot closer together. But no, it's an interesting place. It's certainly up and down.
Would you put it down to the depth, why it's such a good winter water then?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
it's all quite shallow, isn't it?
Yeah, God, yeah, yeah. There isn't a massive amount of depth out there at the minute. Obviously it's been a particularly bad year for water anyway, so it's a little bit lower than usual. But yeah, no, the depth and the way that it warms up quite quick, I would imagine. It's obviously not a big body of water to be warming up, so obviously winter time it certainly helps.
And it's been closed for a while as well, isn't it? Is it only a few months ago you reopened it?
Yeah, so opened mid-November. It was closed for a year up to that point. Obviously the fish had a pretty nice break, and they've done all right in that pretty nice break.
When they're that age, I suppose a year break's not going to do them any harm whatsoever, is it?
No, like I say, obviously since we've been open, we've had a couple of new fish push through the 40-pound mark. So we've got 3 fish in here now that have gone over 40. So they've obviously had a bit of a sort of feed programme, which I sort of started in October when I started. So they've done all right. They've certainly done all right on it.
And you reckon you've got a couple as well that are due to come out that should be 40?
Yeah, the jewel of the crown, Morgan.
Morgan, come on. If anyone's going to catch that one,
we love it.
It's got
to
be me, isn't it?
Good value, yeah.
That's a mega fish as well, isn't it? A big
is.
scaly one.
Yeah,
I remember seeing Simon Crowe of it before.
It's been around for a while, and obviously everybody that generally comes here likes that one. That one's the one, but yeah, it hasn't been out yet, and I'd like to think that would be up there, probably late record sort of size, hopefully.
Wicked.
The way the others have grown, we're 2 or 3 pound up, so.
And what sort of head of 30s are we talking?
40 to 50 fish.
Wow.
So we've had a couple of new 30-pounders as well since we've been open, so it's going in the right direction. Like I say, there's quite a few fish in that upper 35 to 40-pound bracket as well, so if you're sort of looking for a 30-pounder, it is the place to be, certainly winter time anyway.
And a real mixed bag as well.
Yeah, oh god, yeah. Real nice, like you say, scaly ones like Morgan, right down to sort of sparsely scaled deep ones. There's a real, and obviously the classic Oxford, small tails, small fins.
Some of them getting on for like 40 years old, aren't they?
Yeah, god, yeah. Like I say, Delilah's quite an old one. She's probably been here, I think we were sort of talking 50 years nearly now, so they've been here a long time. Wow. They've certainly seen a rig or two.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, obviously you've been taken on as the fishery manager. Enjoying it?
Yeah. Well, it's like I say, I've been doing fishery consultancy work for 20 years, so I've been around the industry a long time. But yeah, it was one of them where the offer came up, and I sort of looked at it and thought, why not? It's nice to sort of be in a sort of guise where you're sort of running it day to day, and you're seeing the fruits of your loins, as it were. Obviously, travelling from water to water, sort of teaching people the way, as it were. You don't get to see it through into completion. Obviously, it's left in their capable hands to carry it on, and obviously here it's my own for as long as I've got it. It's my own, so it's nice to be able to sort of run it like that, and obviously make changes and see the changes happen, and obviously use the knowledge that I've gleaned and spent a lot of time learning at colleges and things. So
brilliant. Well, yeah, on that note, I mean, obviously we're going to pick your brains on that front as well, but for now, I don't know about you, but I'm absolutely gasping for a cup of tea. We ain't had one yet, have we?
No, too busy.
I'll get the kettle on, shall I?
Yeah, why not?
Sweet. Nice. Now, I've actually bought a bait boat with me for this trip. Not something I normally use, but you are allowed to use them here. And a couple of months ago, I did get myself one. And this is the first time I've actually had it out properly. I saw Alfie Russell using one at Walthamstow in the summer. Oh, God, look at them tail walking. That fish was out for about 4 seconds. Mental. Yeah, so Alfie Russell had one of these at Walthamstow in the summer. And what I was so impressed about was the weight of it, you know, they're so light and so small, you know, it goes in your barra bag, no problems, weighs absolutely nothing. The battery's really light and it lasts a long time as well. I have had a bait boat in the past, and one of the things that put me off it was, you know, constantly having to charge up the batteries. And also you don't really want to be in a position where you're relying on it, you know. I think it's always best to sort of fish within your boundaries of where you'd be able to fish with a rod. So if the boat was to break down, then you know you can still get out there, and you're not relying on it, which is often a bit of an issue. I think people that use bait boats, they end up using them all the time, and then they can't fish without them because they think that that's the only way that they can catch fish, you know. So yeah, in my opinion, it's best not to rely on them, and it's good to find your own spots with a lead first rather than just kind of relying on the sonar. And obviously it's more satisfying as well when you've found a proper spot. So anyway, I've got 3 rods out there. I've put them all out with the boat. I've got one out towards the pole on the right hand side, which is basically a hole just this side of it, drops down a couple of feet deeper. One about 20 yards to the left of that, similar kind of range. Again, that's sort of 4 foot around it, and then it drops down to 5 foot, so it's a foot deeper. And then the left hand one, that's about, just over 22 wraps. It's a lovely clean area out there. Just it's probably about 12 foot wide, to be fair, but I've just come this side of it where the sort of silt and the weed meets the gravel. Tend to fish them seams where possible rather than the middle of the spot, just because it's a bit less blatant. So yeah, I'm happy with what we're doing for now. 3 different spots. Obviously, if one of them's rocking, then I can move other rods across. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Well, we've seen a few show, haven't we, mate?
Yeah.
I can't believe that one that was out of the water for about 5 seconds. It just carried on going with its head up. It was brilliant. It's like layer pit, so you should do that over there quite a lot. But no, obviously they're active, so if they're active, they should be feeding, shouldn't they?
That wind is whipping them up, isn't it? It's definitely that sort of what you'd classically call them carpy conditions, as it were.
Textbook winter weather.
It is. It's good. It's good bit of southwesterly wind, quite warm, bit of drizzle, bit of rain in the air. So
pressure must be pretty low as well. I haven't really actually looked at the pressure.
No, it's dropping. It's dropping tonight. I spend quite a lot of time looking at moons and pressures and things. I'm quite into all the weathers and bits. But yeah, next couple of days is pretty good.
We're building up to the full moon as well.
Yeah, we are, mate. Yeah, it didn't escape me.
It's got Morgan's written all over it.
It certainly has. It's Morgan's time.
Well, I thought I'd pick your brains a little bit and about your past, really, because you've been involved in the fishing scene for most of your working life, haven't you?
Yeah.
How did that kick off?
So yeah, I obviously from a young age I've obviously fished like everybody does. We won't scratch too much into that, but obviously started on the floats like everybody. Moved on to sort of carp fishing in the sort of 10, 12 maybe.
And you're down Southampton way?
Yeah, Southampton. So yeah, obviously there's a few lakes down there now. Obviously it's a bit more bit more commercial down there these days. There's a few more fish and a few bigger ones. But yeah, I did all right, caught a few fish, and obviously I always had a sort of inkling in the back of my mind that I wanted to go into something fish related. I was always into it as a kid, a lot more into it than anything else. That was my passion, still is. Ultimately, you can probably see it in my face when I talk about it, but ultimately it's I got to sort of, school leaving age, and by that point I was fairly consistently going to go into sort of spar shoal, going to go and do fishery management. I'd actually done a placement at a trout farm from school, which was all a bit of a laughing joke at the time, because obviously everybody else was going to Woolworths and florists and stuff, and I was off to a fish farm, which was a bit weird. But like I say, went to spar shoal, as you do. At that point I was obviously massively into bait. I've always been into feeding a fish. It's a part of me that's a massive passion, and it sort of ran through my whole working life to now, or still am now. The bait side of things and the feed of fish, and sort of the reaction of fish, sort of looking at sort of complex things like the chemical reactions of things, and obviously, like you say, different esters and stuff like we were talking about earlier on with flavours and bits.
It's a whole another world for me, all that.
It's so good, like I love it. It's always been a massive part of me, that, and I've always tinkered. I had my grandparents, I was always very lucky, like they from a young age nurtured that part of me, and I had my own shed and I had my own bait rolling kit, and I was rolling bait at like 15, 16 for mates of mine who were fishing and stuff. So I've always been into sort of tinkering around with feed and watching fish's reactions. So yeah, I went to spar shoal. Obviously through that process you go on a few placements, different places. Obviously went to a few sort of fish farms, went to obviously Cemex at the time. Obviously for the younger viewers that would be sort of, wouldn't even know who they were now, like, but they had, at the time, had a lot of the history waters, your Yatelys and your Hortons and things that a lot of the viewers probably know. But
that was a great experience then.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. You just learnt a lot from that, and obviously it just sort of cultivated. And I actually went to a bait rolling. One of my work experience, I went there for a month, was Crafty Catcher, which is obviously down in your county, Essex or whatever. I was down there doing a bit. So I spent 6 weeks doing bait rolling, which was obviously like a dream for me, really. Just enjoyed it. Got to tinker with baits, and like I say, we were rolling some pretty special baits at the time, actually, sort of Yatelys baits and sort of tackle boxes baits and things like that. So yeah, it's good. And obviously from that process I went into work, and obviously work-wise I went into trout farming. As mad as that sounds, like, it was a table production farm, so food for the supermarkets, rainbow trout. So, and that was a different world of feeding. Like when you're feeding, we were feeding sort of 80 tonne of food a month.
Wow. So
you were doing sort of 400 tonne of fish a year on some of the farm. Like one of the first farm I worked on, we were doing like 800 tonne of trout a year. So it was a mental amount of fish going out the door to Tesco's and Sainsbury's and stuff. But what that sort of cultivated in me was the feeding part of it, and sort of seeing how much food fish could actually eat, I suppose, and obviously grow. And it's always been a massive part of me, feeding, just watching fish feed, really. It's like you, probably watching them in the edge feeding is captivating, isn't it? When how they feed and what they're doing, and obviously bits and pieces like that. I love it. I've always loved it, and I've always, through that, obviously intertwined. Obviously I was lucky with that job because I had a house with it, so pressure wise, like, I moved out of my sort of parents or whatever when I was about 18, 19, and I've lived on my own 2 feet since then, which is probably a little bit unheard of these days. It's a difficult one I know to get on the housing market, but no, it was good. So I got very independent very quickly, but the sort of overrunning theme behind it was always that I was doing lake work, and I used to get sort of people sort of contact me and say, "Oh, can you come and have a look at my lake?" And I'd be doing it in the weekends, like I'd be working in the week, and then
giving them advice.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Going and netting stuff and looking at lakes and advising people from a young age. And like I say, I've got a fairly synonymous name with a guy from Southampton from years ago, which you probably remember, Chris Currie, that used to be in Carp World. So I think a lot of people probably thought I was him to start with, and then realised I was quite a bit younger when I turned up. But I fished, like I say, fished around, and I ended up down in Ringwood doing on a few of the pits down there. And they were sort of the early stomping ground for me, your sort of Rockfords and your sort of lakes like that, which were once again Cemex at the time, Roach Pit, and yeah, it's good stamping ground, some good anglers down there at the time. And
so you never stopped fishing then?
No. It's always been in me. Like I say, obviously work as always takes a degree off you, and obviously the older you get, the more, like they all moan about and everybody moans about, the more responsibilities you get, the older you get, the harder it becomes. But I still love it, and like I say, I've obviously got a missus and kids and stuff, but I still get out and do it. And like I say, my missus is as intertwined in it these days as I am, so our house is a fishing house. Unfortunately, the kids love it. They love going fishing, so we just sort of roll with it. But I obviously work in the industry. I've done for a long time with the consultancy work, and worked on some pretty high-profile places. And yeah, I ended up, like I say, quite early on having my own sort of fish farm ponds, which were, I used to sort of, once again, feed, go to work, trout farming, do that, then go home, go and feed the carp on the carp farm. So I had, yeah, probably 10 years of that, really.
Wow.
But it's been a long time, but it's I've helped at various different carp farms over the years, and once again,
it's graft as well, isn't it? It's not like easy.
Not
work.
easy
You're
work.
out in all weathers. From what I gather, a lot of the sort of netting stuff is done in the colder months in the winter. So yeah, I mean, I've done a bit actually. Once I went down to one of the farms and we emptied one of the ponds. I think I had like a fractured sternum at the time without even realising it, and it just kind of got worse and worse over those days. But yeah, lifting them fish out, slings full of fish, walking up the muddy banks, emptying them out back and forth, and yeah, it's graft.
I did 10 years of that with Simon and Viv at VS or whatever, sort of from their early inception to sort of mid sort of 2015, 16. And I used to, it was always a busman's holiday. I used to leave trout farming and go and do that for a couple of weeks and help them in the winter. But like you say, it's hard on your body. Your body feels it. Like I say, I've done plenty of nettings over the years, plenty of electrofishings, and obviously through that process, obviously we do it with work. I had, like I say, lads that I employed. It was just hard. Like, it's hard on your body, and sometimes you've got to sort of question. COVID, like most things, makes you question quite what you're doing and whether or not it's the right thing for you. And like I say, I'd had sort of thoughts at that point about the sort of bait side of things. It'd always been running in the background. I'd always been doing bits and pieces for my mates, rolling corkball pop-ups, which I still do, and sort of supplying pellets and bits and pieces to friends. But it's always been one of them that's always been a consistent, and I just got to a point in COVID where I thought I probably should do a bit more of this. And I deal with quite a few of the industry lads, obviously companies in the industry which obviously supply it to your sort of end user, as it were. So it's quite nice. I quite like that. It's quite a personal touch.
So what's the name of your company?
CMCS Fish Feeds. So obviously CMCS is it's Countryside Management Consultancy Services.
Okay, yeah.
Mouthful.
Yeah, it is.
Abbreviated to CMCS, but ultimately, like I say, everybody knows the sort of fish feed side of it generally, and
so, like you say, you're supplying to lakes, companies, and the public as well?
Yeah, and the public, yeah. We've got a website, obviously, CMCS Fish Feed, so...
And you just started doing maggots and
yeah,
casters.
live bait and stuff, yeah. We've obviously, once again, I had a call a couple of years ago from varying people about supplying sort of live baits, obviously pike, dead baits and bits like that, and obviously, like anything in life, when you deal with lots of different people, you supply lots of different people with pellets and bits, and obviously I managed to get a sort of deal with somebody, and I've managed to supply that. So yeah, it's just another thing, another string to the bow, as it were.
Brilliant. Well, maggots are becoming even more popular these days, aren't they? And there's no doubt in their effectiveness. And when you're buying them sort of in bulk and that, you go through a few, it costs a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So,
this place, obviously, they love a maggot in here at the minute. Obviously, the lads around here use a fair bit of maggots, and I think it's that natural side of things. Like I say, we'll touch on it probably later, but there's the fair part of the bait world which I think worms, maggots, casters, there's certainly a lot to be said about it. Obviously, you've had Dave Bohr on recently, who's obviously using the bloodworm and the worms and is in baits, and it's definitely an edge. There's definitely an edge in that, and it's your sort of worm cells and things that obviously Nash have just started bringing out liquids and bits. It's definitely worthwhile looking into. Like I say, I use a fair bit of that sort of stuff in my fishing, and it's reactions.
That's like a trigger, isn't it?
It is. Like you watch them in the edge. when you watch those fish feeding in the edge on things like that, you can see the difference in the way they react. And like I say, I've been tinkering with bait for so long. I've been lucky that I've been able to watch reactions in the fish farm, and obviously on lakes, obviously when I've been fishing and stuff, and you see the difference. That certain things make you think, well, that's obviously got something in it that's worthwhile. But it's obviously winter's a tough time to test things, but it's a fairly good sort of ground in terms of this lake. It's got fairly good winter form, so it's always worth trying.
So
bits and pieces.
You've been like last couple of years. You've moved up to Reading area now, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've lived up there since sort of 2009, 2010. Obviously, blessed with water there. There's quite a bit of water, quite a lot of big waters. Obviously,
you had a dabble on Burfield, didn't you?
Yeah. I was a bailiff on Burfield for Cemex. Obviously very friendly with the fishery manager, and obviously he asked me if I could bailiff up there for him to sort of keep a check on the place. And yeah, I spent five glorious years wandering around there most of the time, sort of throwing bait at fish in the edge and watching the reaction. So yeah, I've certainly been on some waters over the years. Like I say, I've been pretty blessed through work and through obviously friends in the industry, where I've had some nice offers to go and fish some places which you sort of think, it'd be nice to go there, and you get the offer and you think, oh, it's good. So yeah, I've fished a lot of hard waters, like I say, Rockford was my sort of early stamping ground, Rockford, down in that sort of area, and I had a few fish out of there, including at the time a lake record leather at sort of mid-40s, and it's good fun. But that's my fishing, and I like big lakes, and I like to have a bit of space, and like we were discussing, it's having
keep
your
yourself
own
to
time.
yourself and do your own thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, find your own edges, catch your own fish, and enjoy it. Like, if you don't enjoy it, if you're forcing yourself to go, it's hard, isn't it?
100%. No, well, fair play to you, mate. Like you say, you followed your passion, and there's very few people in life that do, and it's worked out for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly has. Certainly has.
Awesome. Well, guten Morgen. It's not Morgan, but we have got a carp. Whee! Well, there you go. A lovely, cracking condition, orchid winter carp in all its glory. I'll make a mouth on it, this one. Super clean, somewhere around the mid-20 mark. Proper result. So I just woke up to a single bleep and then thought, oh, hang on, what's going on there? And then a few more bleeps followed, and yeah, it's come in quite a slow sort of doggy fight. Oh, now he's woken up. There you go, Mr. Carp. You're famous. Right, we're going to get him back, get that rod back out, and see what else the night brings. But yeah, mega result. Let's get a few hours more sleep. Lovely jubbly. Guten Morgen. No sign of that Morgan yet, but still at it. Woke up this morning after catching that one at sort of 2:30. Was up for an hour or so. So yeah, I set my alarm for 7:15. Could see that there was going to be no colour for the sunrise whatsoever. So I thought, I'll have another hour's sleep. And when I woke up and got up and had a look at my lines, the line that I'd put back out in the night, I'd actually put on the wrong tree. Yeah, schoolboy error, but I did get quite a good drop on it. So what I've done is I wound in one of the other ones, wrapped that out and put that back on the spot where I caught one from, which was actually only in 3.5 foot of water. So yeah, quite a shallow spot, that one, and a very clear one. And then this morning I found another spot out to the left, sort of about, what's it, 55 yards or something like that, which is probably about the sort of range where we've been seeing them. Most of the fish have been showing out in front of Chris. Sort of between 50 and 60 yards, I'd say, roughly. Some of them are doing some crazy old shows. So yeah, I've pushed one across a little bit, found a nice little clear spot, and like I say, that one's a little bit closer, so we'll give that a go. But yeah, apart from that, I'm just about to sit down with Chris and sort of see what he's learnt from his sort of fishery management experience, and how he can apply that to fishing, if you like, what sort of things he's learnt that have helped him with his fishing. So yeah, I'll crack the kettle on and we'll get on with that. Proper carpy old weather this is, really mild. It's probably like 12 degrees, big old southwesterlies. Yeah, come on the Morgan. Well, another super carpy day, mate. CAF.
Certainly is, isn't it? A bit of wind.
You've seen a few this morning as well, haven't
Yeah, God, yeah, they were certainly showing this morning.
you? Early bird.
Yeah, you've got to catch a worm, mate, haven't I?
I set my alarm for like 7:15 and I could see there was going to be no sunrise. I just thought, oh, I'm having another hour.
Yeah, I don't blame you. No, it was certainly that sort of morning this morning. They were showing well, and it just felt right. You know, it's been pretty good, hasn't it, really, overnight? But yeah, it's fingers crossed, mate.
Mostly daytime bites, you said, anyway.
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, it seems to be at the minute that's how it seems to be fishing. Most people are catching them in a day, so
It's a bit of an odd one, wasn't it? 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it definitely was. We both of us refreshed a little bit this morning, haven't we? And we've gone again. So yeah, fingers crossed. Morgan for Morgan.
Oh, you, mate. I'd be happy to take pictures of you.
Mate, I'd be elated to see Morgan. That's how happy I'd be. But...
Mega carp, and I was looking at pictures of it last night, and it's like, was it 41 last time it was out?
Yeah,
so 2021.
Yeah, it's a big fish.
Is that late
mate.
summer or something?
Yeah, late summertime. I think it's
Is it a male or a female, do you think? It's hard to say.
hard to tell. The pictures, I've got to be honest, the pictures aren't the best to be able to get sort of shape. Generally, the shapes give it away quite well, but it's got that sort of male look about it. I think. But,
it looks like it could go either way, that one, couldn't it?
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think it'd be pretty close to a late record, that one, if it comes out. So that'd be
Mega. Them big scales on its shoulders, and then that massive, great plated patch. Like,
yeah.
That's a serious carp.
If you're not sat there waiting for one of them, mate, it's not for me. That's how I have always been a bit like that. I've always had to have a target of some sort to aim at, but that's the one.
All right, so what I wanted to know was, obviously you've been involved in the sort of fisheries management side of things since you're a nipper. Yeah. So what would you say are the key things you've learned from that field that you can apply to your own fishing, that's made you a better angler?
I suppose spending a lot of time watching fish and finding fish in sort of when we're netting and electric fishing at different times of the year. It's interesting when you find sort of a concentration of fish in a certain area, and you sort of start to realise quite why they're there, and you see it on numerous lakes, like you probably would if you fished a lot of different lakes. One of the ones that I found quite interesting was anywhere that's had sort of like biggish reed beds and things. They tend to be a bit of almost like a radiator for fish, because obviously the stems take on a certain percentage of the warmth from the sun, and in the winter especially, the fish look for that little sort of lift in temperature, and obviously because they're trying to regulate their own body heat, because it's obviously governed by the water they live in. So if you like I say you've got a decent reed bed on your fishery or whatever, and it sort of happens to be sort of southwest facing or whatever, where you get the most of the sun through the sort of winter months, it's a fair chance you'll find the fish there. You know, they're definitely governed by warmth.
I've always wondered as well whether, because obviously they sit up in weed beds too for a similar sort of reason, I guess, if they haven't got the reeds. And I wonder whether they just kind of wedge themselves in so they don't have to do anything,
Yeah.
Because obviously, if they're sitting mid-water, they must have to kind of like constantly sort of do a little bit to...
Hold. They got to hold their position.
Whereas if they're wedged in a reed bed or a weed bed, then they can just kind of literally lay dormant, can't they?
Sit down, yeah. Well, ultimately, they're trying to conserve their own sort of body weight, especially if they've not had a lot of bait or not been fed or whatever. Like, it's surprising when you feed fish, and that's one of the things I found with the fish farming, is that even on the coldest of days, fish will feed. They might not feed as well, but they will feed. And if they've got access to a feed, it's worthwhile doing. Like, the amount of times I've sort of, probably like you, been around lakes in sort of January, February when it's really cold, like you've had ice and stuff, and you apply a bit of bait and you think, I don't, like a couple of edge spots, and you go around and check them and it's gone, and you think, they're still feeding. And I do think that like a lot of people generally go down to the bit fishing, small bits and pieces during the winter. And sometimes I think if you're on a sort of fishing a campaign, or you're fishing a water where you're going to be going there regular, keep applying a little bit of bait really helps. Like, keeps those fish sort of ticking over. Ultimately, they're trying to keep themselves in tip-top condition, immune system's up, so that should they have any sort of immune sort of attacks, they can fight it off better. Like us, really. Like we get a cold. Generally, most people get colds and stuff in the winter. It's because our immune system isn't as strong because it's colder. Obviously, we're not doing as much or whatever. It's the same scenario with the fish. They're trying to do the same. So I think little things like immuno boosters and stuff, like garlic's a massive one. I spend most, as you said earlier on when we opened my bucket up, a lot of my bait is centered around garlic. Like a lot of the sort of feed based things that I've obviously produced over the years have had for the fish feed company have had garlic in, and like I say, I've seen the benefits on the farm having fed it to them at certain times of the year. So
I mean, we know ourselves, don't we? Garlic's one of the best natural medicines we've got on the planet, isn't it? And if you eat a lot of that, then it keeps you healthy, doesn't it?
Certainly does, mate. Yeah, it's good for you, like I say. And with fish, there's a few benefits. Argillus obviously are not keen on it. So obviously, generally, as you said, with fish laying dormant in the winter, you get to a point where the fish are obviously sat up, they get a few argillus on them. Obviously that lowers their immune system a little bit. If they're obviously feeding on garlic, the argillus don't like it, they don't like the taste.
Yeah, I've heard that before, actually.
Yeah, they're hooking into the bloodstream obviously to keep themselves alive, obviously the argillus. So if you're feeding a bait with a bit of garlic in it, obviously it seems to certainly help. Like I say, I don't get anywhere near the sort of argillus that I used to on the farm, and I think that's to do with the fact that they get fed. It's sort of autumn time, I feed them a bit of garlic on the feed, and through the winter it certainly helps. And like I say, I noticed there's a few bait companies now coming out with a few garlic baits, which they've certainly switched onto it. So it's not a new thing, but I've spent a lot of time looking at bits and pieces like that, because that is my passion, feed and making sure that you're giving the fish the best possible sort of outcome. So
excellent. Yeah, that's interesting. What about like features then, because you've obviously seen a lot of drained down lakes, haven't you?
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
So I mean, like when I'm fishing a feature, you know, if I find like a clear spot, I'll tend to fish like the seam, you know, where it's kind of going in from the gravel to the silt, and I just feel like there's more likely to be more naturals in that area. I don't know, do you think the naturals come on to the clear spots?
I think they do at times. I
suppose like because they come onto bait, don't they?
Yeah, so. Definitely. I think that once again with the naturals, it's a lot of that is to do with warmth. Like what I find sort of early spring is that when the hatches are going off, as you've probably watched it, same as I have, and everyone's fishing with zigs and stuff, because obviously you've got the beetles and various things coming out of the sort of sediment layer. With that, they're looking for the warmth, the same as the carp are, same as everything. So ultimately, all of these animals appear in the same areas, like at the same sort of times of the year. So a hatch goes off, the carp tend to be there because they see a hatch going off. They see all these sort of little black bugs coming up and they're obviously eating them.
Is that normally a depth thing? So with like the shallower areas obviously warm up quicker, definitely. So it's them that are coming alive quicker, and like everything, like you say, is gravitating towards those warmer areas. Yeah. And certain bugs, obviously, they're looking to come up off the bottom to the surface, isn't they? So it's almost like they're crawling to the highest point. Yeah,
well, obviously a few of them obviously have to hatch on the surface, so they come from the sediment layer up and get to obviously the surface, and then obviously hatch on the surface and then take off. And ultimately, I think the fish follow that pattern because obviously they're in the same area. Like I say, the key, and this is a massive one for me, like fishing wise, is in the winter is to look at the banks that get the most of that sunlight. So the very limited sun we get during our winters, if you're on a lake for a day, just see where the sun's hitting for most of that day, which part of the bank it's hitting, because obviously you have the four corners generally of any lake. The fish will ultimately be where that warmth is. Like if it's coupled with a bit of depth, even better, like, because they can drop back into the depth in the evening, overnight, because obviously in the shallow water, obviously in the night it's cold, but it warms up quick in the day, and it's like you, Joe, I spend a lot of time stalking fish, I spend a lot of time watching fish, and I know when I go to a lake and I'm setting nets and stuff like that, I look for those areas first. I set the nets in those areas first because that's what I expect them to be. So a lot of it is, like I say, a crossover between the fishing and the fishery management. And I've found hundreds of fish sometimes balled up like in areas, and you think, why are they there? And I start to sort of piece things together. And it's, yeah, like you say, a lot of it's to do with weed and warmth, and like I say, reed beds are a good one to sort of consider if you've got that on your fishery.
And what about, because obviously a lot of lakes, sort of especially pressured lakes, the fish tend to gravitate out to the middle, don't they, this time of year, and then sit at whatever depth they feel comfortable at. What do you think dictates that depth?
In terms of?
Like, do you think, as in, like, say they're sitting at 3 foot in 6 foot, do you think that's the temperature, or do you think that's oxygen?
Yeah, no, so a lot of the time that's thermocline. So obviously when the water's warming up, obviously the sun's beating down on the surface. You've got obviously a level, the sort of levels, as it were, a bit like a sort of, try and explain it in layman's terms, a bit like a sort of Battenberg cake, lots of different colours, and it gets slowly cooler as it goes down, obviously. But what fish like to have is a consistent temperature. They don't like big fluctuations in temperature. So what I find is that the deeper water holds the temperature for longer. So carp generally go to that deeper water because it's a consistent temperature, and they can set their sort of body to it. Like I say, their body's governed by the water they live in, so the temperature of that water is, they're trying to find even a half a degree is a little bit more comfortable, warmer, so they're looking for that. And if they get a bit of sun, they rise up on the surface, get that sun on their back, obviously warms their body back up, and then they obviously, as it gets cooler, they drop down into the steady. It's big fluctuations is massively sort of problematic for fish. They don't like big swings in water quality, whether that be pH, whether that be water temp, whether that be oxygen. Ultimately they like it to be fairly steady. So yeah, I find that, like I say, they rise up on the warmth, which is why you'll catch them on sort of mid-water zigs and things, like say 3 foot up.
I was out with Dave Levy a few weeks back, and he was saying that there was a lake he was fishing years ago, and it was like 13 foot in 18 foot of water, throughout the whole winter. I was surprised. I thought it would have varied a bit, but he said no, that was the most consistent depth that he'd catch at.
Yeah.
And that was over the deep bowl in the lake. Yeah. So, like you say,
they'll be rising up on that warmth and then dropping back down in the evening when it's getting cooler in them upper layers, so that they're in a more consistent temperature, and that's all it is. Like I say, they're the masters of their own environment. You've only got to watch them to see that they know what they're doing, especially when, like I say, you see them in the edge and things. It's good.
All right, and on that front then, fish feeding, because we had a little chat about this yesterday. What have you learned through that, and as a result of that, how do you tend to feed bait, because we talked about all the little bits and pieces, didn't we?
Yeah, so generally the way I look at fishing is bringing fish to a spot but not giving them a lot to eat in a fishing situation, because ultimately the smaller bits and pieces make them work a bit harder for it, and they find you're trying to stimulate them into feeding. Ultimately, most lakes that you fish these days, like this one included, are busy lakes, like they see a lot of bait. What I always tend to do is sort of look at what other people are try and understand what other people are doing, understand how they're fishing, and ultimately it's the small bits and pieces. Like I say, I've got a mix of mixed pellet or whatever today, like real fine pellet, a few maggots, bit of boilie crumb. It's that sort of mixture of not a lot, and lots of powders. Lots of powders and ground baits. I use a lot of ground bait in fishing.
So you can imagine, can't you, when the fish come in and feed on that, it's just puffing up everywhere, and it's just like the whole water is full of attraction all around them, isn't it? And their taste buds must be going absolutely potty.
Yeah, that's it, and that's what you're trying to create. Is you're getting them into an area where they know there's food there. On a day like today where you've got a bit of wind, obviously you're drawing fish to the spot, because every time even a bird goes over that spot, it just puffs up a little bit and then it goes down, and you're drawing fish to the spot all the time. And like, having watched fish a lot in the edge and fish for them in the edge, like I say, it's, for me, lots of little bits and pieces is makes it a lot harder for them to work it out. Big round boilies, yourself, you probably watched it. Like, you throw 3 or 4 big round boilies in, they're gone like that. You throw those same 3 or 4 boilies in, but in a crumb, it takes them 20 minutes to deal with it.
That's it.
And that's, you're holding all the time, you're just trying to put them in a position where they're coming to your spot and looking.
And almost winding them up.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. That's what you're trying to achieve, ultimately, is just get to a point where, like us, like I say, you're feeding, there's a lot of food there, but it's hard to eat. And then they spot your hook bait and go, oh, I have that. And like I say, I've done it like the difference in two. You have obviously the very fine powder and then a big hook bait sat on the top, so it's like, there's my mouthful of bait. So you're giving them something to look straight at. And ultimately the other way around as well. Like at times I've sort of had biggish beds of bait with a couple of small bits, but never be afraid. I know a lot of the sort of good match anglers and that, and I speak to them a lot with the fish feed company, with supplying the live bait and stuff. They definitely are happy to fish 2 or 3 rods on a spot, and they catch them like that. But it's small baits on a big spreader bait, but that big spreader bait could be a load of ground bait. And having watched them a lot in the edge, it's very easy these days to turn up with a kilo bag of 15mm baits and chuck them in. But your old fish on the spot a lot longer on very fine stuff, like say bits of hemp, very small pieces, and it's clearing the spot ultimately. If you're fishing a campaign water, you're clearing your spot.
Yeah, well the other thing is, you know, like we all know how much more confidently they feed when there's a bit of competition for food, you know, so if you're creating that situation that, you know, one fish gets in there and it's kicking up the powders and, you know, colouring a bit of water up, and then other fish like want to get in on the action, don't they?
Yeah.
And then obviously 2 or 3 fish on the spot, you're going to get a bite a lot easier than you would with just one.
100%. Yeah, oh definitely. Like I say, we don't be afraid to look at other things. Obviously boilies, I know it's an easy thing, but don't be afraid. Like I use a lot of flake sort of maize, flake barley, all sorts of things like that. That basically it's the sugar content of that is another thing that draws. They like. I'm giving them something that they like, but I'm making them work for it, and ultimately that's the key to it. Like if you give it to them very easy, 20mm baits, round ones a kilo, they clear it up quick. Like you want to hold them on that spot for as long as possible, because you're looking for that mistake. And like you say, if you get 2 or 3 fish, the powder's wafting through them, the liquids, like I use a lot of liquids, it's just a lot of smell, a lot of, like I say, don't be afraid. There's a lot of good baits out there that you can buy from a supermarket, your chilies, your garlics, and the sort of powders scenario is a great one. Like little spod mixes, little sticks of they've fallen out of favour a little bit. Like,
I mean, it's like the Americans, isn't it? They just use all that grit, don't they? Which is all from the supermarket, isn't it?
Yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to use small bits and pieces, and it will catch big carp. Like I've caught plenty of big carp in my life, and it's just different. Most people don't want to do it. It's hard. Like it's hard to get that, but when you watch them feeding on it, it just gives you all the confidence in the world. Paste, like you said to me about, I use a lot of paste. I do. I use lots of paste because it's that constant leak of attraction. That all of my angling is centred around something in the swim that's working all the time.
Sending off a food signal.
Yeah, and like you say, there's plenty of things on the market these days, your sort of liquids and your smart liquids, like we were saying yesterday, like that sit on the bottom and they're just leaching all the time. It's good.
All right, so on a different note then, what effect does rain have on water?
So it depends on the time of the year, I find, but like this sort of time of the year when it's cooler, like what it tends to do, because the rain tends to be colder, it tends to cool the main body of water down, where obviously in the summer it can cool down. It depends purely on the day how the rain's coming. It sounds mad, but if it's cold, the atmosphere is cold, obviously the rain's bringing cold water into the lake, and obviously cold water into the lake, the fish don't particularly enjoy that because it's changing the temperature, and they're thinking, right, and that I tend to find that their centre drop down, where obviously there's sometimes when you get a sort of freak spring one where you've had a warmish morning and you get a bit of rain and you think, oh, that's probably going to be warming the water up a little bit, it's a bit warmer, and it does make a difference. Like you came in yesterday and I've got my little thermometer in the edge or whatever to check the temperatures of the water, because it's something that I do when I'm fishing. I do that in work anyway on the farms, and it's interesting to see the fluctuations just from day to day on whether it's crept up a little bit or dropped a little bit, just how to regulate your baiting and various things.
Does it oxygenate the water?
It can do if it's hard enough. I don't think it oxygenates the water as well as a big wind does. And like say on somewhere like this where you've got sort of average depths of sort of somewhere between sort of 6 and 8 foot, it warms up a lot quicker with a decent wind, like a warm wind like we had last night, and obviously we've got a bit of it today. You do see a lot of the time it warms up the water a lot, in especially this time of the year when it's
Because a lot of places it just switches off when it rains, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I always wonder why. And I remember Rob Hughes used to say the fish would rise up. I guess that's more in the summer months when it's raining, you know, but they'd come up in the water up to the higher.
The other thing to
level.
consider is the acid sort of, obviously you can get a little bit of a pH change because you get, obviously rain picks up the atmospheric sort of.
Yeah, with the amount of pollution we've got in the
Yeah,
air
exactly.
days.
Yeah, without getting too politically, we don't want to get too involved in all that. But it does pick up a fair bit of sort of different things in the atmosphere, and as it comes down into the water, it's bringing a pH change. And like I say, any swing in that water quality for the fish, if it's a big swing, they don't like things like that. They like it to be steady.
Is that like in the autumn when all the leaves drop? That must have a big effect on the sort of
definitely.
pH, mustn't it?
Yeah, definitely. pH, obviously, the pH breakdown, because obviously you've got a bacteria level in the silt anyway in every lake. Obviously that's what's breaking down those leaves into a silt layer. When they start breaking down, you get that sort of pH change with that. Like I say, acidic leaves, you get sort of a lot of leaves like your oak trees and stuff tend to be quite acidic.
Because that tends to knock the fishing on the head for a bit.
Does,
as well.
yeah. It's pH change. It's like I say, most people wouldn't even see it because you don't check. It's not like I do it with work, but most people wouldn't be rocking up to a lake with a water testing kit to be able to go, oh, the pH has changed today. But it makes a difference, and it's all these little things you add together that can put lakes off for a couple of weeks. And I go to a lot of lakes with fishery owners that say, oh, it hasn't fished for a month, and you sort of go and you check, and then I go back a couple of days later and check again, and I say, well, you can see the pH has changed, this is what's going on. And it's a lot of people don't understand it, which is, like I say, if everybody understood it, Joe, I wouldn't have a job ultimately. But it's like I say, for me it's a lot of learning, and like I say, I spent years feeding fish, years sort of watching fish and reactions, and years working in this environment where you get to see different lakes and the way fish behave. So it helps you, definitely helps you to sort of with your angling. But like I say, I've always had a passion for the sort of feed side of things. So it's never going to be anything other than that for me. But there's certainly a lot of variables when you start to blow your mind.
Yeah.
Right? If you just come into it, you think, how am I ever going to catch them? But they are carp at the end of the day, and they've only got to make one mistake, and it's in the bottom of your net. So it's difficult old game. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it, wouldn't we? You're grazing it, boy. You're getting to that age now, aren't you?
Proper grey, isn't it, mate? Bit of go, yeah? What, any colour or flavour you recommend? Oh, go on the right hand, Rod. Left up, a little bit stuff. Right. Well, mate, that was another quiet night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit cooler, wasn't it, last night? When you sort of a few times in the night I woke up and thought, a bit cooler this evening, not quite as windy. I think it's like all big fish waters like this, you never know what you're going to have, never know how the fish are behaving, you just watch and hope, ultimately. But they're moving around, weren't they? But not anywhere near as much as they were the day before. So yeah, I think it's been a pretty quiet night on the lake across the board last night.
Sounds like it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Really caught, so.
Oh well, at least we had that one.
Yeah, it's good, mate. Yeah, it's pleased to at least we showcased at least one fish. But yeah, it's yeah, well, like I say, they're in here. They get caught pretty regularly.
Yeah, well, I've seen a couple this morning. I've just moved a rod, so I'm going to sit it out for the day and potentially do the night. I'll see how it's going later on. You've got a skedaddle, mate.
I've got to go back
busy, busy boy.
I've got to go back to the funny world of work, mate. Unfortunately, yeah, that's the beauty of my life. I don't get too much time to do it when I want to do it, but it's yeah, no, I've enjoyed it, mate. It's been good, hasn't it?
Cheers for having me down. So obviously, it has only just reopened over the last few months, and there's probably loads of people out there who've got no idea that it's even open now. So how do they go about booking? Is it a booking, or do you just turn up?
So we've got obviously an app, the Catch app, which obviously a lot of fisheries use now, which obviously suits people travelling distance.
Oh, using that, yeah?
Yeah, they're using that. you can obviously book that online, and obviously you can do it the old school method and rock up on the gate and pay on the gate. Depends, obviously. So the guys travelling distance quite like the catch app, but if you're fairly local to Oxford, obviously give us a call.
Yeah, or you go to Linear and it's too busy,
that's it.
and you know,
pop in. Yeah,
it's just
like I
down
say,
the road, isn't it?
That's
Really?
it certainly is. But yeah, it's a good winter water, so we're stood on the banks at the right sort of time of the year, and most people generally come here for a sort of winter 30, winter 40, so it's good. They're all going in the right direction, so
yeah, mega, mate. Well, perhaps, you know, potentially I'll come back in the summer with a guest and see the place in all its glory, you know, because this is the second time I've been here, but the last time was like January as well. So although, you know, it's a nice place and it looks nice, I'm sure it looks absolutely stunning in the summer.
Yeah, oh God, yeah, when the pads are up and it's all looking a bit more like a fishery, a bit of colour in it. But yeah, it's pretty washed out and grey in it in the winter. So yeah, no, it'd be good to have you back, mate. I'd be pleased to have you back.
Sweet. All right, mate. Well, thanks again.
No worries.
And I'll let you know how big Morgan is later on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll be happy to take the photos for you.
Right, not happy. I was just saying goodbye to Chris. Had a massive drop back on my left-hand rod. Struck into nothing, wound it in. The lead's been dumped off and the hook point was turned over slightly, so without a doubt I just got done. Right, this is all clipped up. That's the same spot that I caught one from the night before. So yeah, it's only like 3.5 foot deep out there. Nice clear gravelly strip, just fishing this side of it. Oh, gutted about that. Absolutely gutted. Yeah, I'm well impressed with this little boat though, I must say. It's pretty rapido, but also it's got a function on it where when it's been going in a straight line for a few seconds, it kind of locks that line and goes into like an autopilot mode, keeping it straight where you want it to go, which is very handy. I think that's the only company who's got that feature at the moment, but I imagine they'll all be on it soon. The other great thing about these boats is they're super affordable. Now, a lot of them are crazy money these days, whereas these, I think you can get the basic one for about 300 quid. And then obviously you've got the Actor Plus sonar, which is this one. And then you've got Actor Plus sonar and GPS as well, I believe. Obviously the GPS is handy to have, just because you can do the old return to home thing as well as mark your spots up. Because obviously when you're fishing a long way out, it takes a while to drive these things back. So if you could just press return to home, then you can crack on with sorting out whatever else you've got to sort out. So this one's just over 22 wraps, so it must be coming up to it about now. That's about the line. I'll do is I'll just tighten that line right up when it does hit the clip, so I've got a nice straight line on it. There we go. Right, that's it. That's proper tight to that. And I'm just going to lift my rod up high, because obviously when I'm casting, I'll lift the rod up and follow the lead down on the drop. So then I know it's exactly the distance I'm fishing at, you know. And obviously also you get to feel the drop as well. Not that I need to out here, because I know exactly what this spot's like. It's crystal clear and rock hard. So a little bit more left. Obviously you just can't beat that presentation. I know obviously some people will class it as cheating, but you know, being stealthy makes all the difference. And like I said before, you know, if I'm gonna use a pole, what's the difference in using a boat? It's not something I'd use all the time, but it's quite a nice, handy little tool to have for certain situations. Well, that was on the old Lucky Mushroom rod, that one. Got to be done, innit? It's interesting that both the bites have come out of like 3.5 foot of water. It's making me wonder whether it could be worth putting a couple of short zigs out. I've seen fish out there, and obviously we haven't had loads of bites. I think there could be a good chance of a couple of bites if you're get in the right zone with a couple of short zigs. But for now, does feel like there should be a chance of a bite off the bottom, so let's sit through this morning period, keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully Morgan's going to turn up soon. There you go, look, the autopilot works well, not doing anything here. Once you're on a straight line, she stays on a straight line. Good bit of kit, that. Right, got a little zig out there now, and I've had a rod in a zone where there's been fish showing for 24 hours. Like, well, you know, I've seen probably 7 or 8 there in the last 24 hours. And then this morning, I had the binoculars out and I could see a bit of fizzing going on as well, sort of out of my water, to be honest with you. But there's 2 swims opposite, they're actually closed, so I think maybe another couple of wraps won't hurt at the moment. But yeah, the zig I've put out, not where the fizzing was. I've put a rod back on the pole spot though, which was, well, the fizzing was probably about 15 yards behind that. But I thought obviously I'll put a bit of bait on that spot the first night. It's been left for 24 hours. And what I didn't know is this swim's been shut because of the water levels. So there's a few swims on the lake at the moment where it's so shallow in the margins, it's not really safe to net fishing, and the water's gone up over the last few weeks, and obviously now this swim's fishable. So yeah, although it's a spot that's been hammered over the years, obviously it hasn't been fished a lot lately, so yeah, it seems like it's worth a go for sure. I obviously like that zone, and it's a bit of a deeper bowl in amongst that area, so fingers crossed. But the zig I feel most confident on, sort of 2.5 foot. Not allowed to use plastic baits or any imitation baits in here, so just got a little Alfie Russell Billingsgate pop up on there, just sort of trimmed down with a couple of red maggots on top of it. And that is in the zone where I've seen fish, so doing all I can, I'm trying. Obviously the rod that I lost one on, or had that bite on, which managed to dump the lead and bend the tip of the hook over, that's back on the spot now. I'm thinking maybe I should put 2 rods on that tonight, maybe put a little bit more bait on it. I think sometimes in these sort of scenarios, you know, where they sort of tend to sort of shoal up and fish are holding up together, you know, if you can get a few of them feeding, then obviously that can kind of create a bit of a feeding situation rather than just fishing, you know, at the moment I've sort of been fishing a couple of handfuls of maggots and a couple of handfuls of casters and a little solid bag, so yeah, just fishing for a bite really, but potentially, you know, with the amount of fish that are in here, it might be a case of trying to get them feeding. But yeah, I'm going to have to stay tonight, and I really. There's a lot of big uns in here, and home of the 30s. Can I go home without a 30? Right, it's croissants o'clock. 2 of them bad boys in there. Now the only issue I've got with staying tonight is I've run out of gas. Chris was going to leave me some, but I forgot to remind him. So I might be going tealess tonight. But a small price to pay for a big one, isn't it? Now I just put the drone up. It's the first time I've been able to since I've been here because of the wind, but it's always good to get a few shots, you know, just to sort of give you guys a better perspective of the lake, and also it's quite interesting to see, isn't it? You know, you sort of see these sort of clear areas and the bars, and obviously when the water's this clear and there's big balls of fish, you get to see the fish as well. So yeah, there's obviously quite a few out where I've been seeing them. Yeah, quite a big pack, to be honest with you, but they're moving about, they're not sort of sitting static. And then there's another swim over there with no one in it, and there's quite a few in front of that one as well. And then in the middle it looks like there's the odd one scooting about, but the majority of them definitely look like they're out behind me, and there's actually a guy setting up over there now, so hopefully he's going to push them this way and we're going to have a bite. I've seen a couple more shows. Oh no, don't run out of gas now. At least let me have my croissants. Oh, luckily I've got a cup of tea. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident, to be honest with you. I can't believe that zig hasn't gone, because that is right in the zone, right in amongst them. So it could go any time. Come on, where art thou, Morgan? I'm not greedy though, any carp would do. Oh, lovely jubbly. Well, I've been sitting there kind of half expecting a bite all day really. Well, I think it's now about 1 o'clock, and that zig rod, as I mentioned, you know, put it out there after seeing a few fish, and then got the drone out, had a little fly around and could see that there was quite a lot of fish in that area. And yeah, the zig rod's ripped off. And when I say ripped off, it absolutely roared off and pulled about 30 yards of line off of me. Well, the old adrenaline's kicked in now. So I've only got like I think it's like a 10-pound fluorocarbon hook link on there. So don't want to give it too much. Feels quite weighty. Come on, girl. Such shallow water here. Definitely getting a bit on it. Like I say, I just don't want to give it too much. Just go easy. Come on. I reckon I probably only just about got it back to where I hooked it from. Tell you what, it's got a lot of weight, this fish. Obviously there's always a little bit of a worry with zigs, with foul looking them. And see, when you do, they tend to fight a lot harder, especially when you've hooked them in the tail or something, because you simply can't turn them out. But I'm praying that this is hooked in the mouth. It feels like it is because I can feel nodding, you know. Couple of red maggots on top of a Alfie Russell Billings gate. Just a little, I think they're about 12 mil or something like that. Come on, the universe. Come on, the Morgan. Gotta try and get this in. Speaking to my girlfriend this morning, she's not very well, and I think she could do with a bit of TLC. I think I'm going to have to get back after this, so I'm just praying I get it in and we can end the feature on a massive high. I also run out of water and I haven't got much food left. Actually, I can get water from here, but I've got no gas and not much food, so as you can see, I'm skinny enough. It's really got some weight, this is. Definitely got the nod on it, so should be hooked in the mouth. My arm's aching already. I'm gonna have to switch up a bit. Can't be good to get the drone up now because you'd be able to see it twisting and turning because it's so shallow out there and the water's crystal clear. Oh. Come on, girl. Let's be one of them big old hippos. Still a long way out, still a good 80 yards out, and it wants to take a bit more as well. Oh, come on. Give it a bit of right so it doesn't go towards the reeds. Oh, it's taken again. That, like I say, I really never want to give them too much on the light zig hook lengths. It is fluorocarbon, and I've not tied it with a knotless knot. It's tied with a grinner, so it should be better. You know, I haven't got that rubbing against the inturned eye. Bloody hell. This feels so heavy. Oh. I've hardly got anything on it. Beating me up. Could it be Morgan versus Morgan? I mean, if he's called Morgan, he's bound to be double hard, isn't he? Come on, boy or girl, wherever you are. weight. I literally just said to myself, right, please universe, can we have a fish? I need to get home to my girlfriend. Oh, it's taking even more line. I'll get that rod up because I'm a bit worried about them bars out there. Oh, just splashed on the top out there. So it's about 70 yards out now. Oh, blooming battery died as I was playing it because it took so long to get it in. Oh, we've got a chunk. The Zig done the business. Oh, it's a big old one, I think. It's got a massive great lump on one side, big deep belly, definitely a 30 plus. Yes, we've done it. Oh, excuse me language. Right, it's quite shallow here, so I need to get the waders on and sort him out and yeah, sort out what we're going to do, where I'm going to do the pictures and that. Get him in a bit deeper water. Buzzing. Result. Oh, thank you, universe. He's a big old chunk. Definitely one of the old ones. Yeah, look at that. All her winter glory. They've got the best mouth in the world, but I suppose at this age, they're not gonna. Leeches in there. Get them out for you. Must be pretty annoying. There we go. Right, let's give you a quick weigh. First 30 of 2023. I reckon anyway. I might be wrong now, it might be 28 pounds. Oh well, if it is, it is. Come and get what you're saying. Yep, 34. Yeah, weak here. 34 and a half. And there she is, proper old Orchid Lakes dinosaur, Granny. Remember these fish? Oh, seeing them in Carp Talk many years ago, and this is a kind of prime example of the kind of strain of them in here. And yeah, they're mega old characters as well. And I'm over the moon to catch that one. So yeah, what a way to end the session. Oh, if you fancy a go down here, I highly recommend it. Right then, Granny, we're going to get you back. Right, time to say goodbye to this mega old carp. Look at that. What a result. Mega way to end a bit of a tricky session, to be fair, considering I've been seeing them. But yeah, sometimes the old zigs are the one, aren't they? Look at them big boggly eyes. Awesome. Back you go, mate. Oh.
Right, so I don't know if you believe in ghosts or not, Joe. I'm always a bit sceptical and still am now, but I've got a ghost story for you. I was fishing Cleveley Top Lake probably 10 or 12 years ago, and when I fished there, a guy called Sean Leverett, you probably heard of Sean, he told me this story where he went diving in the lake and he was cutting out some sticks for Ben, who run the lake at the time, on the bottom where people kept losing fish. And when he was down there, he got this real horrible dread feeling come over him. It's gin clear, 18 foot of water. And he said he got a panic attack. And as he's trying to swim to the surface, he's knocked out the oxygen, and he's swallowed loads of water. And Ben said, I thought he was going to drown. Like he said, I'm never getting back in that lake again. And anyway, this story sort of come about because I was telling him, I was in the lake one night and I had a fish weeded up. And there was all this dead weed that floated to one end. It was actually the winter, but knowing it all just gathers, and this fish is stuck in it. I knew it was only 4 foot deep, So I walked along the edge of this margin. I'm looking for the fish when I just got this horrible feeling come over me that I shouldn't be there. Anyway, I thought, sod this. And I remember getting back to the bank and pulling this big ball of weed in. It had a 19-pound mirror in it. And a few weeks later, I'm fishing a swim called Fitman's. And it's called Fitman's because it's the longest walk. And I'm laying there, and in the morning I woke up and I thought, say it was on me in the night, like, I mean, on my chest, right, pushing me down. And I'm like, that was weird, like, definitely something was on me. No, that day I'm sitting there, and it's quite a chilly day, and I'm making a cup of tea, and I've leant over to get something from behind my bed chair, and the door's unzipped on this bivvy. So I zzz, and I've gone, hello, turn around, there's no one there. There's no wind. You know what I mean? Just this zip has come down on its own. And I thought, this is so weird. Done another night, as you do. Anyway, next day I'm packing up. I got to the car park and there's this lad called Ryan, and he said, oh, any joy? I said, no, nothing, mate. And he said, oh, what swim is you in? I said, Fitman's. And he went to me, oh, I won't fish in there anymore. And I went, why? Because of the walk? And he went, no, he said, I literally got sleep paralysis. I woke up and something was holding me down. And I was like, this is freaky, you know what I mean? It's definitely something spooky going on. It's sort of one of them that makes your hair stand up on the back of your neck. Anyway, I just carried on as you do. I'm targeting a fish. So I'm fishing it through the winter, and come the spring, Rob Hughes has messaged me. He's doing some stuff for Carpology, and he's doing that underwater series. And he said, oh, like, I want to go out. Long story short, Rob's gone out in the lake with his diving equipment on. One on a marginal shelf, the other one's in the middle on a zig, and he wanted to photograph a zig upwards. Anyway, he's come back, sat on the edge, and he's a bit out of breath. I went, you all right, Rob? And I hadn't told him about Sean and this weird thing that's going on, because I thought it's not fair, he's going to be diving in here. He went to me, Dave, he went, I've been diving on my own in 100-foot deep chalk pits, and I've never got freaked out. And he goes, and I've just had a panic attack. And I was like, no way. And I told him about Sean. He went, I'm not going back in this lake tomorrow. So sort of all this was going on. There was a few other things, like in the winter one night, my dog went missing, and my dog would never leave my bivvy. She'd be on the thing all night. She went missing for 2 hours, and I found her at the back of the cornfield. But that could have been a thing. But it was just weird that on this lake she's gone and walked off, like. And anyway, yeah, I was fishing it the second winter. Occasionally, I'd have an eerie feel about it all the time. And my wife's messaged me. She's gone, oh, we're going out for dinner with the people over the road this weekend. Remember that? You know, you think, oh God, like, yeah, right. So that Saturday we're sitting in an Indian, and this guy we went out to dinner with, his name was Paul, and he's a psychic medium. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm gonna have to listen to this all night, you know what I mean? And he's sitting there, we're having dinner. He went, oh Dave, do you mind if I give you a message? And I went, oh yeah. He said, yeah, you've had a presence around you. And I went, yeah, well, it's coming up to Christmas and I'm taking the mick. And he went, no, honestly, you've had a presence around me. I said, have I? He said, yeah, and it's a young girl and she wants to give you a message. It's me to give you a message. Bear in mind, I've told no one in my family. And I said, what's that, Paul? And he said, she wants me to tell you, she don't mind the fishermen round the lake, but she don't want any of you in the water. And I tell you what, even now, the hairs, they just stood up on the back of my neck, and I thought, get to f***. I was like, and he went, and I told this, what had been going on, and he went, yeah, she was probably drowned there. Anyway, so if you believe in ghosts or you don't, this happened, right? I've gone home and I thought, no, I'm researching it. Hatfield Peveril, girl drowning. Turns out Hatfield Peveril was basically the place that they took all the witches back in like the 1800s. If they thought someone was a witch, a woman, that's where they took her to drown. And there was actually a well in an apple orchard where they drowned these girls, and the lake used to be an apple orchard. It was freaky, yeah. And I remember the next week sitting there fishing at night, and this guy said, if you get an uneasy feeling, say, can you leave me alone? And I'm sitting there on my own, it's like going, leave me alone. Like a fucking idiot. But yeah, there you go. It's a ghost story for you.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, goosebumps.
So is this the beetle? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, should we name him?
Yeah, go for it.
He'll know who it is and I say the story anyway. So I was fishing this lake where I had like an out-of-bound sailing club area, and fishing the last swim before the out-of-bounds, and there was another guy. He was also fishing it, baiting different areas, And yeah, I turned up one evening to do a night, and he was already in there, and it was like, what do I do? I was like, I don't mind if I'll just go up there a little bit further and fish my baited spot, do you? And he was like, no, go for it. And I had a couple of fish that night, and I just went and like sacked them up down in his swim wash. Didn't wake him up, just like whilst he was asleep, just put them in the water and sacked them up. And then woke him up at first light to get him to do the photos of the fish what was sacked up in his swim. I think, yeah, if someone had asked me whether it was okay to go out there, I'd have been like, yeah, jog on. So yeah, good old boy Beadle.
Well, he watches the show as well, so yeah, he's good to see it. Hi, I'm Ritchie. So yeah, tell us a story about when someone stole a fish from your lake that you were fishing.
Right, Dennis Davis, Colin Swaden was fishing Longfield. I was at Longfield when they arrived, and they said to me, "Here, Ritchie, we've just seen a geezer take a big 20 out of Yovely," and we followed him. He put it in his back garden pond. Oh, did he? Did he? Right. We'll go and get that after dark. So we went round there, all three of us, landing net in hand, went down his back alleyway, found his little pond, but he's sitting there eating his dinner. And he could see us in full view, but it was dark, so he couldn't. But if he'd have looked out, he might have seen the rippling of the pond. And he had a bleeding dog there as well, one of them, what's them dogs called? The blind people have, what they called?
Oh, retrievers?
No, golden retriever, that's what, a Labrador. Had a Labrador, a great big thing. And it was sitting by the door, but looking up at him, because he was eating his dinner. So we're standing there, and either Dennis or Colin said, "Well, what do you reckon, Ritchie?" I said, "I'll give it a minute." Like he could turn around and he'd say, let's go for it. So we got in this little pond, right, with all these lily pads everywhere, just scooping and scooting. All of a sudden we scooped it, right here, let's go. And we went back, with £23 we weighed out and put it back in Longfield. So that was, if you're looking, mate, hard luck. He shouldn't have took it out of our water in the first place. Yeah.
Love that. Right, well, sadly, it's that time where I get to say, that's it for this month, folks, but we'll be back in 4 weeks' time. Yeah, like I say, next month we're going to have something a little bit different for you, hopefully. Bit of content from my travels in Asia. Like I say, I've got some good ideas, and if it all goes to plan, then yeah, hopefully we should have some mega scenery and hopefully some interesting fish to show you all. So yeah, if you are out there having a go at the moment, best of luck to you and fair play to you. Just a little reminder, the competition draw at the moment is for 13 of these books. So once I get back from a trip, I'll do a draw for these for everyone who's contributed £5 or more over the next, well, for this issue and the last issue. And of course, there's also a Chris Baxter commission drawing. So yeah, if you fancy getting a hand-drawn picture of yourself with a fish, then you can win that prize. So yeah, once more, massive thank you to those who do contribute, especially those who've set up a recurring payment each month. I've got loads of ideas for this year, and yeah, there's going to be lots of good content coming, and hopefully you'll keep enjoying it. So stay safe, be lucky, and hopefully you'll be bagging a few whackers. See you soon.